solutions to plastic pollution are plentiful. We don't need to wait for some big technological breakthrough.
Judith Enck is my guest. She is an expert on environmental policy and the founder of Beyond Plastics. She was appointed by President Obama to serve as the regional administrator for the EPA. So Judith, thank you so much for being here. I really admire the work that you're doing beyond plastics. So what are some of the solutions we have, and how did you come up with that title?
Well, I came up with the title because I wanted something that described our mission in like 2 words or less. And I actually did an informal focus group with students at Bennington College where I teach. And we came up with that. We didn't spend money on a consultant. We just kind of put our heads together. And other than relying on plastics, the first and best thing is to see if you can use reusable or refillable products. So for instance, if you're in an office setting, some people are heading back to the office, use this for your coffee, a reusable mug, not a single-use disposable. If you're out at coffee shops, bring your reusable mug with you. When you go to the supermarket, bring your reusable bag. There are more and more products appearing on the market that are either reusable, refillable, or made from concentrates. So it can reduce packaging. If you can't do reusable, refillable, then a much better option is materials like cardboard, paper, metal, glass. All of that can be made from recycled material. And then when you're done with it, if you can't reuse it, you put it in your recycling bin because it's easily recyclable. That's the polar opposite of plastics. At Beyond Plastics, we have found that the plastics recycling rate in the United States is only 5 to 6%. So that means over 90% of plastics used in the US does not get reused or recycled. So that means it either gets littered and might make it into our rivers and then the ocean, or it's buried in landfills where it lasts for centuries, or even worse, it gets sent to a garbage incinerator where it pollutes the air, primarily in low-income communities and communities of color. There's a phrase called environmental justice. That means when we have polluting facilities purposefully sited in low-income communities and communities of color, because companies think those are the areas of least resistance. So this is a big issue. And the nice thing is that there's a lot that we can do as individuals. And I can tick off a list of things, but the way we're going to solve this is with systemic change, passing laws and enforcing the laws to make sure we move beyond plastics.
There was something that you did say. I got an email from you about the restaurant industry and how you can contact them and tell them how to use different things. I don't know exactly. I'm sure you could talk about that more. Like, for example, I ordered in dinner the other night, and sometimes restaurants give you the option to not use plastic utensils. At other times, they just throw in the bag. And, you know, some restaurants are using balsa wood utensils and things like that. But what are some of the solutions that you could come up with that might be another way to handle the restaurant industry?
Well, Victoria, that's a great question. Just a few weeks ago, Beyond Plastics released a new report on how to reduce the use of plastic in restaurants. And that's on our website, beyondplastics.org. You can look at the full report, or you can print out a one-pager that you can actually give to your local restaurant when you're there as a customer. And there are a range of things. You mentioned when you get takeout, often you're eating at home. And most people have reusable utensils in their kitchen, so they don't need to receive all of the single-use plastic utensils that's often wrapped in plastic. Most people can manage without a straw. You don't need a plastic straw. But what we're finding is some of the apps, for instance, that give you the option of skipping the stuff. You can click and say, do
Right.
not give me this mountain of plastic utensils. You still get it, because it's just a matter of habit. You've got a lot of low-wage workers that are just automatically filling bags. And so the city of Los Angeles, for instance, has adopted a law that says the default is you do not get all those utensils and all those plastic extras. You have to affirmatively ask for it. And that has been working out beautifully. So that's an example of, there's individual actions you can take, but if you pass a law, it'll affect millions of people and
Right.
more likely be effective.
That's great. I know. I'm this, over the years, have you seen an improvement? Have you seen it go back or, backwards? I mean, in the past few years, we had to use more not reusables, like, throwaways. I don't know what you call them, just undisposable. But I've just seen so much more trash lately because of the issue that happened in the world.
Yeah, we were making some slow but inadequate progress, and then the pandemic hit, and there's no question there's been some backsliding since the pandemic. But the good thing is that none of the important laws, like plastic bag bans at supermarkets, none of them were repealed. They were just delayed. But unfortunately, plastic is cheap. It's used to be made from chemicals and oil. It's now made from chemicals and ethane, which is a byproduct of hydrofracking. So for a lot of small businesses, they don't wake up in the morning and say, hey, let's buy a whole bunch of single-use plastic packaging because it's going to hurt the ocean. They get up in the morning and say, our budget is tight. We need to buy the cheapest material we can. And that's how you get stuck with items like polystyrene, known as styrofoam, plastic bags rather than paper bags. And unfortunately, it will be cheap for a while because of the glut of fracked gas. And so we're not making the progress that we need to make, given the seriousness of using so much plastic, what it's doing to our health, what it's doing to the climate change problem, what it's doing to streams and rivers and oceans. The trajectory is going up rather than down.
I feel that for some reason, being in New York City, I feel that that's happening. So what do you think the biggest problem is? I mean, I have my pet peeve about water bottles, but what do you think is one of the biggest problems, I should say, in the plastic industry or the non-reusables?
Well, it's hard to pick the worst offender. We know from doing litter cleanups, what we find a lot are cigarette butts, which include plastic. Cigarettes seem to be the last thing that people feel comfortable littering. They wouldn't think about throwing maybe a plastic water bottle on the ground, but a lot of smokers routinely will litter their butts. And
they just throw them, right?
Yeah, they just throw them. Maybe litter their butts is not the right phrase. So cigarette butts are a problem. Plastic bottles are a problem. Straws, bottle caps. And the caps are really a risk for seabirds, because the seabirds think that it's shrimp because it's sometimes red or orange, and they'll consume the bottle caps or bring it back to the nest of chicks, and the chicks will choke on the bottle caps. Fast food packaging in general. I used to live in Brooklyn, and almost every weekend I would go out to straighten out all my neighbors' recyclables. So we had everything in the right bin. And then while I was out there, I would pick up litter, and it just never stopped coming. Fast food wrappers, granola bar wrappers,
Right.
plastic
And what do you
bags.
do with that?
All you can do is make sure you don't litter it and don't and throw it out properly. And what we really need to do is have alternatives. But it's interesting. I've worked on environmental issues for decades. I've met people who are climate change deniers. I've never met a plastic pollution denier, because the evidence is everywhere. You walk down a city street, you see plastic bags in the trees,
I know.
plastic bottles in the street, on the beach. It is everywhere, and it is getting worse.
And now what on the other end of the spectrum, or maybe it's the same problem. I got an email from you the other day about PFAS on boots, and like, can you explain that? Is that like a film? Is that?
Yeah, well, PFAS is a giant family of chemicals that is mostly used to make things like greaseproof or slippery. So it's in fast food packaging. For instance, if you eat a lot of fast food, you're exposed to PFAS from the wrappers of the food because they want to repel the grease. I never eat microwavable popcorn because the inside of the bottle, the bag rather, has a layer of PFAS chemicals to repel the grease again. So no more microwavable popcorn, please. But it's also in rain jackets and clothing that is intended to repel water. And it's really hard to believe that we have not banned PFAS chemicals, because they cause terrible health consequences. And they're called forever chemicals because they don't easily break down. They're with us forever. And PFAS chemicals are very commonly found in food packaging. So we need to be really mindful of that.
I remember when I was a kid, even people would put their ice cream in the microwave to like get it softer. But now that you're talking about this, it's like disgusting. So the stuff that like comes in from even the cardboard packaging had to have a like a lining.
Mhm.
And that probably went into the ice cream. I
Yeah.
can't even think about things like that.
Yeah, definitely never put any plastic packaging or even lined cardboard into the microwave. I also no longer put plastic in the dishwasher because it hits a high temperature and you don't want chemicals leaching out. Plastics are made from chemicals and fossil fuels. And those chemicals and additives and plasticizers sometimes leak if the packaging gets warm, or if it's exposed to certain things like acidic tea. Never have a cup of tea in a polystyrene cup, because the styrene will leach into the acidic tea.
So that's like going out and getting coffee. Well, most places are using paper now, but even the paper has to be lined, right? So the paper, it's never ending, right?
That's why you bring this.
What is your vision for Beyond Plastics?
Well, I started Beyond Plastics right after I left working at the EPA during the Obama administration, because I was so overwhelmed by the science in terms of how damaging plastic is. So my vision is to build a grassroots movement across the country that works for policies that reduces plastic. We're not international yet because we have our hands full with the 50 states and the territories, but we are actually organizing local groups and affiliates. We just started in February. We're up to 50. 3 people or more can establish a local Beyond Plastic group. So you can have Beyond Plastics Brooklyn, Beyond Plastics Detroit, Beyond Plastics LA. Or if you're working with a pre-existing group, you can be an affiliate of Beyond Plastic. we're taking this approach because we are going toe to toe with the plastics industry, which is really the chemical and fossil fuel industry. And
Right.
we just don't have the army of lobbyists, and we don't make campaign contributions. So we are building the movement from the grassroots up. All we have is information and the ability to network with others. So my vision is to have Beyond Plastics groups and affiliates in every state and every territory of the United States, where people have timely information and are excited about working together for cleaner communities.
That is fabulous. I wish you the best of luck, and I'll help out as much as I can.
Thank
I
you.
don't.
The only thing I would add is we're constantly fundraising. So if people want to make a donation, they can go to beyondplastics.org. And, we have monthly supporters. Some people give us $2 a month, which those are the gifts that really are sweet. Others a little bit more. So, we're nonprofit. We just hired our 8th staff person, which is really exciting. But that means I've got to raise the budget every year.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Victoria. Great to be with you.